that's exactly where Mott and Boggs come in. Another year under their belt, Boggs or Mott, either of them could be the closer of the future. Boggs has really exceptional stuff. If he can get it consistent, he'll be that guy. He'll be that ninth inning guy for the Cardinals, and could be for a while. I mean, Mott has tried to add to his fastball, and he's got a sinker working this spring. He's worked on a changeup that is a little erratic, but it's getting some. It could become a pitch that he can use. He's a guy who, he brings more than heat nowadays. Has a little bit more movement. He just doesn't have that kind of wipeout pitch like Boggs does, and those guys become all that much more important. And they're important. Their role in the bullpen is only enhanced by the fact that they will have to slide into the role McClellan had. I mean, he was a guy who would pitch in the 7th, 8th, sometimes 9th inning, and he'd go up against the heart of the order. He was a guy who could get both left and rights out, and each of those 3 years that he's done that job as really the de facto setup guy for the Cardinals, he's dropped his ERA. He's had good improvement in his peripherals. I mean, there's been a lot to like with his development in that role. And you're exactly right that if they move him out of that role and move him into the rotation, what are they giving up in the bullpen? And actually, guys, I think that's going to be a bit of a tug of war between Tony La Russa and maybe even pitching coach Dave Duncan in the front office, because Dave Duncan's opinion is you fill the 5 spots in your rotation with the best 5 guys you have, and then you move on to the bullpen. Tony doesn't necessarily see it that way. Tony obviously knows that starting pitching is a great indicator for a team's ability to contend, but he also likes building his bullpen from the back forward, starting with a closer and then going to the setup guy, which is what McClellan has been. So it'll be an interesting clash of philosophies, but I don't think you have to look very far right now to know that their preference is to put McClellan in the rotation and try to figure out who's going to fill his role from the folks that are left.
Just go back to Mott real quick. Do you think it's with harnessing his talent, do you think it's more of getting his head straight, or is it just experience in the league?
I think it's experience as a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't forget that this guy was a catcher for a long, long time and didn't have any need to develop anything but a knuckleball to show off at parties. This was a guy who moved from behind the plate to the mound with nothing but cheddar. I mean, he just threw heat, and he guy could throw 98, 97. Probably averages around 96.5, maybe somewhere in that realm. And just throws hard, heavy, and fast. But it was straight as an arrow. I think with experience, he doesn't throw the same way he used to. His mechanics are more like a pitcher and less like a catcher. His off-speed stuff is now starting to come around, so that it's more like a pitcher and not like a catcher, or not completely absent. And he's got this 2-seam fastball that's got more sink to it, that he's found a way to make it run for him as opposed to flattening out and hanging there.
Go back to the Wainwright thing real quick. Just a related issue to that. What do you think of the Johnny Gomes situation where he was, accused of singing that he's gone? Do you believe that could be mistaken?
Oh, I'm sure that the truth is somewhere in between, or that there was some spin for the satisfaction of apologizing. There was probably something there, whether or not he was singing or whether or not he was chanting or whether or not he was walking around doing a musical number meant to be a question. Who knows? I mean, it adds to what's become a pretty cool rivalry. Yeah, it adds to the Cubs are nice and the Cubs are historic, but there's some real acrimony here between the Cardinals and the Reds, and it starts at the top with Jocketty and filters down to the players.
Did you get any players' reactions about that?
I got a lot of rolled eyes. I'm not sure they cared.
Mm-hmm.
You think about it, they have bigger issues with the Reds than that.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with the fact they won the division, and then going next to, or maybe even ahead of that, to the fact that Jason LaRue doesn't have a career anymore because of what happened.
Going back to who's not with the Cardinals anymore, every year there seems to be kind of a punching bag, and last year Brendan Ryan was the punching bag. Do you feel that, I mean, obviously Carpenter didn't like Brendan Ryan. Was there a lot of other players that didn't care for him, or other than the manager too?
Well, I think that's hard to say because you can't just throw that out there that Carpenter didn't like him. I mean, Carpenter glared at him on. I mean, you're talking about that instance, right?
Yeah, well, and I guess I just read some St. Louis blogs over the summer too that kind of mentioned that those two weren't
the best of friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess so, but I mean, one of the reasons why Brendan Ryan was able to get his job back, you guys remember he wasn't in the lineup because he was struggling, and then all of a sudden was getting playing time and was starting to get traction again, was because of Carpenter. I mean, Carpenter asked for him to be on the field, which maybe is part of where the frustration came from later when he was late to the field. I mean, Carpenter spoke up for the guy because he knew what kind of defensive player he was, and was part of the reason why, Brendan actually got those starts. You can look back to when Brendan wasn't playing much. He was playing when Carpenter started. So there was a fondness professionally for him, and there was a frustration, with some of his actions personally. But I don't think I think the phrase that you hear most often was that and even today I was talking with a couple of the guys in the clubhouse about him, and they all wish him well. I think they were all genuinely fond of him. They grew frustrated with some of the things that he did, or some of his personality in the clubhouse and stuff like that. But don't lose sight of the fact that if he was hitting 260, 280, 290, they wouldn't care. You got to cut to the issue. I mean, part of why they were frustrated, or part of why what he did didn't exactly rub some of his teammates the right way, had little to do with what he was actually doing, and had everything to do with how he was producing. If he's out there playing Gold Glove defense like he was and like he's capable of, and hitting 280, they're able to look the other way a lot easier.
Which in any situation, that's pretty much the bottom line.
Right. I mean, that's exactly right. And, the team chemistry is going to be a topic of discussion because the Cardinals made it one by going out and getting Berkman and getting Terrio and advertising both acquisitions as part of sort of retooling the clubhouse and making it a better place to be. And while there was some of that, I mean, I don't know exactly how to describe it because it was a tricky thing to wrap your arm around. It wasn't a bad clubhouse. There wasn't friction. There wasn't animosity. And I've been around teams where there just are people that don't get along, or there are people that are malcontents, or there are people that are just that make a clubhouse a sour place to be. That wasn't the case last year, but there wasn't a whole lot of interaction either. Well, winning is a great cure-all for that. I mean, forget adding Berkman is going to be a good thing, but adding Berkman's a good thing for any team. I mean, he'll sit around and tell stories, and he'll entertain, and he'll bridge gaps, and he'll be a liaison between one clique and another clique. He's the rare position player that will frolic into the pitchers and keep them entertained and bring that to. So that's all good, but as good as Berkman is, he a 10-game winning streak is even better.
Right.
Being in first place is even better. I mean, winning is it brings great chemistry.
The last thing we got for you tonight, Derrick, we do appreciate you calling in, is how do you feel Ryan Terrio is going to fit into the lineup and fill that spot that Brendan Ryan couldn't quite hold last year?
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, so far this spring, Terrio's been pretty impressive. It's all relative. I know he kind of struggled last year. Was playing a lot of second base after the Cubs made the move, and then he got traded to the Dodgers and was back at second base. Here he is moving to shortstop, and I want to see more of him in games. But as early as it is right now, he seems pretty fluid out there. He was an average to better than average shortstop when he was at his best with the Cubs. So there's no reason to think he can't be an average shortstop with the Cardinals, and maybe even slightly better with as much practice as he's going to get tracking down ground ball. The real thing is what kind of offensive upgrade is he over Brendan Ryan, and that's the real issue here. And he and Schumacher are both guys who could hit leadoff. We'll see how they jockey for position here in spring training. It's entirely possible, and some would say even probable, that you could see those two alternate. Leadoff spots. If it's a left-handed starter, Terry will be the leadoff, and Schumacher will be an eighth, or someone else will be playing second base. And if it's a right-handed starter, then Schumacher is leadoff, and Terrio is batting eighth. I mean, you could see a lot of things like that with Colby second, and then of course we know right now who the 3, 4, 5 hitters will be, and that's Pujols, Holiday, Berkman. And part of me still wonders if Tony will put Berkman number 2. He seems really dead set on keeping him number 5, but if Berkman shows that he can reach base for a good average and may not have the power or the sock, then it might be too tempting to ignore to put Rasmus in that 5 spot and Berkman in that number 2 spot. And then Terrio looks pretty good as a leadoff hitter there, who can run the bases and make things happen. His whole role will be get on base for number 5 and number 7 to drive him in.
Last question before we let you go, and like I said, thank you for coming on again. If Colby Rasmus doesn't perform the way the Cardinals thinks he can, is he a Cardinal next year?
Yeah, I think the first part is he's going to perform the way they. I mean, he is hyper talented.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And I think all this muckety muck off the field and all the things that have surrounded Colby and his development, or whatever, the Ankiel getting playing time, Ankiel not being receptive to Rasmus being around, Tony and Colby and all that, the rigmarole that went through last year, and Colby requesting a trade and all that stuff. I mean, I think it's kind of hidden the fact that he was the most productive center fielder in the National League, and he was only in his first full season as a starter. I mean, this is a pretty talented player we're talking about, and there's no reason. I mean, your first part of your question was if he doesn't perform up to the expectations. I don't even think there's a question to say what if. I mean, I think the expectations are there because he has the ability to reach them, and there's every indication that he will.
And would you think that he's, I guess, the key to the Cardinals season for, I guess, performing? Someone that needs to really jump up and perform, or is it David Freese?
Well, that's a good way to put that question. Here's how I look at it: is Freese is the difference between the Cardinals being an offense with 3 standouts and a deep lineup. Freese is what stands between them and their ability to consistently, put scoring opportunities from inning to inning. Freese just brings a deeper lineup, handles a position that has been a black hole here for the last few years, all those things. So he brings a deeper lineup. What I would say about Colby Rasmus is Colby Rasmus is the difference for the Cardinals between having a good lineup, a good offense, and a great offense, one that strikes fear. I mean, the Cardinals, if Berkman gets up to, if Berkman hits like he did in 2009, just say 2009. I mean, if something wild happens and he has a year like he had in 2008, then so be it. The Cardinals will be, a juggernaut, with the guys that they have in the middle there, because they can stack 400, or they can stack 3 guys who have the ability to reach base 40% of the time and have the track record of slugging better than 500. Now you throw Colby at his peak into that mix, and you could have 4 guys like that. I mean, that's unheard of.
Yeah, and stuff like that's going to help the Cardinals overcome the Adam Wainwright thing. Derrick, we really do appreciate you calling in. We kind of hope to maybe get in touch with you again as the season moves along, and just see your thoughts on how the season's going.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys. Good luck with your show, and have a good evening.